I was invited to Finland recently, Helsinki, by the Finnish authorities. And why in the name of God would people in Finland would invite anybody from the J to Helsinki? Because they wanted to get an insight into what we were doing and try and see could they learn from what we were doing. Because they have a game called Danish baseball, and Danish baseball is very like Gaelic games. It's kind of developed in the same way. When Finland is free about 100 years now, so it became part of their national identity, Danish baseball. It's a bit like American baseball. So I then had to try and explain to people in Finland what this thing called the J is. So maybe the easiest way of doing this is that's what the J is. The J is Ireland. And the one thing we can say about everybody in this room is that you're somewhere up there. We can be sure about that. Your club exists somewhere up there. After that, I can't say any more. I can't be sure because there's huge variations within, across and between clubs. And if your club isn't up there, it should be in here, someplace. Because the thing is expanding across the world as well. And I know we have Owen from New York and Colleen from London and different people from different parts of the world. So, and that's the unique thing about the J. Now, as I said, the only thing I can definitively say is that you're up there someplace. Now, when we come to the player pathway, you may not be acquainted with the player pathway, but you see something like this. This is what the lads were talking about last night, so we're not going to, but I think the critical thing here is child, youth and adult. You play to learn, you learn to compete, and you perform to excel. And you can see the different ages and stages there. Now, if I was to take your club or any club here, Peter, your club down in Waterford, Eamon, your club up in Malterson, do ye adhere to that pathway? I don't know. I can't say you do or you don't, because I don't know. What I would like to think is that you do. And the philosophy would be the child plays to learn, the youth learns to perform, and the adult performs to excel. Now, does that get turned around sometimes? It does. And do you get this here happening here? You do. And do you see degrees of manicism and sidelines? And Colleen was telling me a very interesting story last night. They have their games in London on Thursday. Their school games, their school blitzes on Thursdays. Why? There's no parents there. And they're wonderful. And Saturday, it's crazy because the parents are there. So why? How can you kind of countenance that? So that's a cultural thing that we're trying to change. But we need to be clear. You play to learn, you learn to perform, and you perform to excel. So now, how are we going to facilitate that? If you were here when we started in this conference 21 years ago, I'm not sure I could answer the question. I couldn't. I don't think I could. But we're in a better position to do it now. So if we say, right, let's look at the child. We have this thing called have a ball. And we had huge problems with have a ball. Trying to get a name for it. Fundamental movement exercises. Nursery. Kids didn't want to be told they were in the nursery. So we call it have a ball. I see Ola Reck here. Ola's a very interesting person. And she is responsible for Fun and Run. Because Ola has a disabled child who cannot play hurling and football. And she was at her wit's end, and she came to us and she said, Pat, can we do something to get you on playing? I want her to be part of the thing in the same way as others are. So we devised this game, Fun and Run, which is basically hurling rounders, football rounders, handball rounders. I'm not going to go into it now. You'll get more information downstairs on it. Then we have what we call come on and play. And come on and play basically is freestyle hurling, ground hurling, wall ball, rebounder, anything to do with a holding the ball. Catch and kick, same thing, anything to do with a football. Any kind of a game. Pele's in there, new game devised by Sean Kelly. So anything to do with a football. Then we have the Go games. If you were here last night, we spoke about those. Under 7, under 9, under 11. Every kid gets a go for the entire game. Absolutely essential. We have the skill challenges that go with the Go games. And then, biggest development we've seen in the last dozen years, the Cool Camps. So, if I went to your club and I would say to you, does that reflect what you do in your club in terms of getting kids to play the learn? Or is it ultra competitive stuff that's coming from the field over here? Are we working through these things to try and ensure the kids are playing to learn? I can't answer the question. Martin Lynch might be able to do it out in Ashbourne, John Brennan might be able to do it in Red Hort, but I can't answer the question. But ultimately, that's the menu. That's the menu we should be looking at. And that's what becomes the benchmark then of success. Can kids play off their left and right hand, and can they kick off their left and right? That should be the benchmark of success. And that's how we should judge ourselves as coaches. And John McGrath said below this morning, an inspirational guy, I know nothing about the long jump, I know nothing about pole vaulting, but I know a lot about people. You don't have to know anything about those things. It's all about encouraging the person and getting the best out of them. So, last night we spoke about youth drop-off, huge problem. 58%, and it's not unique to the G8s. And there's lots of reasons why kids drop out, because they're not getting what they're looking for. So the super games basically are, what are the super games? They're an extension of the Go games. And you basically go to a venue, whether it's a school or a centre, at 7 o'clock on a Wednesday evening, and if you go there for 6 weekends, 6 Wednesday evenings, 7 Wednesday evenings, 10 Wednesday evenings, you're guaranteed a game at 12 or 13, 14 or 15, 16 or 17. Now the biggest problem within our existing model is we cannot provide games. It's an impossibility. And no matter how hard the Meath, Bowden and Oak tries, it's not going to be able to accommodate big clubs like Red Hort, Dunboyne, Dunshaughlin, Ashbourne and small clubs like Meath Hill. It can't be done in that system. It's an impossibility. But we are locked into that system. And that system unfortunately is broken, so we have to get out of it. And what we're talking about here is a framework that provides games for kids. Now the difference between the super games and most other things is the kids are organising the games. They have responsibility for it. And the Office of the Children's Ombudsman and the Department of Youth Affairs, they're all hugely interested in this. Why? It shouldn't be the adult that's dictating for the kid what's been done. It's the kids deciding for themselves. And if you were listening to Michael Quirk last night, he spoke about the importance of autonomy. The kids are driving the bus and they're learning from the experience. So that's what the super games are all about. And 10 years ago, the Go games were relatively new. This is the next big thing in this space, super games. Will it happen? You're the people that will ultimately determine that. You can have fun and run at that level as well. We saw some research during the week from UCC and Cork saying that kids who come here from other countries are a bit intimidated by Gaelic games. Hurling, football, not for me, but fun and run is an ideal way of introducing multi-ethnic kids, kids from deprived backgrounds. It's an ideal way of doing it at that level as well. The same with come on and play catch and kick. We have the failures, and we've opened up the failures. The failures traditionally were the winners, the under-14 winners went to failure, which is a bit crazy really. Now we're working towards a failure for all weekend, where every team in the country will play in a failure, as distinct from the under-14 winners. And that will be a significant change. The development squads in the schools of excellence, if you were here last night and you heard Brian Cuthbert, there are problems in that space. Why? Because we don't know what talent is. And there are 3 lads here in front of me, and if the 3 of them were 16, nobody can be sure which one of the 3 of those is going to make it at 21. Because they are the people that are ultimately going to determine that. But the danger is, when you go into talent development, you'd say, Owen, you're gone. So he can't make it because he's being cast out. And that's what's happening in our squads at the moment. So we couldn't be happy with that space, and we're trying to change it. Now, there's some great work going on there as well, don't get me wrong. So we have to look at how we can change that. In the adult side of things, then, we have fun and run, potentially again, catch and kick, come on and play. The World Games have been huge for the international units. We had the first World Games here in Ireland 2 years ago now. 58 teams from all over the world, and it was just incredible. 27 native-born teams, Oman, South Africa. It's just incredible, really, and it reflects the growth of the games. And then we have things like international rules and hurling shinty that I'm not going to dwell on. So they're the projects. Now, if you were here 10 years ago, those projects wouldn't be up there because they didn't exist. So what has happened here? This has been an evolutionary process. It's an iterative process. And the biggest thing up there are the cool camps. And that's thanks to Charlie Harrison. Charlie is unique in that he's an all-star with Sligo. He came on board a couple of years ago, had some ideas about revamping the camps, and my God, has he revamped them. The figures have just gone through the stratosphere. And at 142,000, that's the biggest child sport promotion in the world. There isn't anything bigger anywhere in the world. And it proves what can be done. But at the end of the day, we are only catering for a fifth of that cohort. Now, could we cater for any more? Not a hope in hell. If that number goes to 150,000, we can't manage because we don't have the capacity. We don't have the pitches, no, we don't have the personnel. So now that takes me on to personnel. These are the people. And this is something that you're going to hear a couple of times today in different contexts. So, do we need many people? We need an army. That's how many people we need. What kind of an army do we need? We need a volunteer army. What kind of a volunteer army do we need? We need a massive volunteer army, right? MVA. And you'll hear MVA coming out now again in a minute. And people are saying to me, Pat, like, cut out that stuff about MVA, we can't understand it. It's a bit complicated. I said, what's complicated about being in this massive volunteer army? And I can definitively say that everybody here is in the massive volunteer army. Now, whether you buy into the player pathway or whether you run the projects or not, I don't know. But you're in this massive volunteer army. Now, so in terms of what we try and do then, we try and train the coaches, and we have the different levels of award by way of coaches. And I'm not going to kind of dwell on these. You can see those for what they are. And we try and make them child, youth and adult specific, the different awards. So now, if we said we're going out to Rat Road, because that's my club now, and I originally came from where John McGrath comes from. I come from Tallow, and it's 9 miles from where he's from. And I remember when John McGrath was the bin man in Tallow. He was collecting the bins in the rubbish lorry. He didn't go into it today, but he's one of the most humble guys you've ever met. That's where I first saw John McGrath. But, so if we go to a club, if I go to Tallow, if I go to Rat Road, and we say, we're going to do an assessment of our coaches. We know these people are in the massive volunteer army. So this guy, if we had to describe this coach, I'd say he controls the action and he changes. He's in charge of everything. He's the boss. I control everything. I'll tell everything what to do. I'll tell everybody what to do. Are there coaches like that out there? Yeah, loads of them. Is that the way to coach today? No, unfortunately. Because what you're looking at there is an energy system. And you must get as much positive energy into that system as you possibly can. Now, if you're the only source of energy, there's an awful lot of energy missing. If you're the only source of that energy. So, that's he controls the action and he changes. He should be in the army. Some other kind of an army, not our massive volunteer army. So then we kick on and we say, okay, 10% of the guys are in that bracket. We kick on and we have a look. We say, this is a bit better now. So the coach, he consults, he advises, and he cherishes. It's more about us. There's more of a group thing. So there's more energy coming into the system. So it's getting better. Still not as good as it could be. So you consult, you advise, and you cherish. COACH. And then we have another look at it, and we see there's an awful lot of energy in this system. Why? Because he's co-creatively assisting and challenging. He's working with them. We work together here. We must get as much energy into this system. I'm working with G. John McGrath, again, he was working with the athletes. He must get as much energy into that system as possible. Now we can talk about how we're going to do that in a minute. But how are we going to get as much energy into that system as possible? And that's what coaching is all about. Are you injecting as much positive energy into that system as you possibly can? Now, if you're in control and if you're commanding the thing, it ain't working. If you consult, if you advise, and if you cherish, it's a bit better. But now we work together to make this happen. That's the ultimate in good coaching. That's what really good coaching looks like. And if somebody said to me, and there's an awful lot of confusion out there about what the J is and what it isn't, and where it is and where it's going and what it's doing and what it's not doing. If somebody said to me, can you describe what you're doing over in Rockland? I'd say, one thing more than anything, you're building character. That's your job. As a coach, to build character. Better learners make better people. So, now, then we've come up with, we have the Go Games, they've been huge. And we have the Cool Camps, they've been huge. So, what are we going to finish off the child space with then? We're coming up with what we call the 5-star centre. So I'm going to try and explain the what, the how, and the why. What's the 5-star centre? And this is at child level. So if you're vigilant, we're trying to cultivate increased levels of moderate to vigorous activity. So here's our friend MVA, he's back again. Moderate to vigorous activity. You're in this massive volunteer army. You're trying to ensure kids get moderate to vigorous activity. Right, how are we going to do that? We have 5 interfaces. Have a ball, fun and run, come on and play, catch and kick, the Go Games blitzes, and the skill challenges. That's how you do it. Very simple. Now, if there was a problem with sport in this country, in my opinion, and I know, Colin, you're here from the Irish Sports Council, for me the biggest problem in sport in this country is people who differentiate between PE, physical activity, and sport. The whole thing is bullshit, and the sooner it stops, the better. This is what kids want, and that's what they need to get. And whether it's PE, or physical activity, or sport, doesn't matter. It's activity. They're out, they're enjoying themselves, they're having fun, and they're with their friends. So, why are we doing this? Growth mindset. And that was referenced again last night. So if you weren't here last night, what's growth mindset? Growth mindset is you believe, ultimately, that you will succeed if you make the effort. Effort is the key determinant. So Owen will make it because he makes the effort. And that's what growth mindset is. Not fixed ability, not a fixed mindset that I can do this. And there's thousands of experiments all over the world to prove the importance of growth mindset. That you believe and you're convinced that if you make the effort, you'll succeed. That's what it's about. That's why we're doing it, because we want to cultivate growth mindset. We want kids to believe that effort is the key determinant. And then we drive intrinsic motivation because they will have a love of doing it. And we'll optimize impact. Now, I'll give you an example of a small school in Limerick where this is happening already. So I'm going to play this video.
The Have a Ball initiative is a series of fun-based exercises which contribute to the development of rudimentary and fundamental movement skills among children aged 4 to 12 years.
Have a Ball is really about it's getting the basics right, getting the proper start. And if a child gets the proper start, learns the skills, the proper movements, they make better players, they make better participants in the GAA.
Head, head, shoulder, shoulder, hip, hip, tap, tap.
Excellent, that was absolutely perfect.
Oh, very good.
Good man, Killian.
It has been a pleasure for me working with Willie on an ongoing basis from week to week. The amount that the children have learned, their movement skills, the improvement I've seen from week to week and the transfer of those skills back into the classroom has been clear. Obviously it makes the whole thing worthwhile.
The children love it, they're having great fun. We know that they're developing bilateral coordination and physical literacy. They're enjoying themselves. They will stay and play with our GAA because literally they are having a ball.
Willie Welch is highlighted there. Willie has a stand downstairs. I'm not in the business of selling stuff, but he's come up with a device that you can put into the schoolyard that facilitates this. Willie has played Limerick, under 21 hurling with Limerick. He's a farmer, but his real passion is in this area. But what he's proven there is incredible. We sent some people from DCU down to the school then in Limerick, and there was a 6-week intervention, and what they proved that there was a 7% increase in the fitness and in the movement of abilities of all those kids in 6 weeks, which is absolutely astounding. Astounding. Traditionally, Have a Ball wouldn't have been there. They'd have been force-fed into some kind of a game because we didn't have something like this. And what I would say about the 5-star centre, if we can get this into every school in the country, and we can get every kid to get this programme for an hour a week, we're talking about 16.8 million hours a year, and that's phenomenal. That is transformative by any stretch of the imagination. Does it need to be transformative? It does. We're heading to become the most obese nation in Europe. Who are the people that will determine whether that happens? You're the people in your club that will determine whether it happens, not me. You're the people that will determine. The massive volunteer army. And what we are saying, look, can you get somebody who will Have a Ball and give us an hour a week for 6 weeks? And I can assure you one thing, if you do, you'll get another 6, and you'll get another 6, and just leave it at that. I'll take Fun and Run for 6 weeks. I'll take Come On and Play for 6 weeks. I'll take the Go Games for 6 weeks. Doesn't matter. Give them a specific job, give them a definitive period of time, and they'll go into the massive volunteer army like you've never seen before. Now, there are huge challenges at youth level, and I had some people up to me last night based on the talks we had there, and obviously we had over 2 hours last night. We don't have over 2 hours today. But when you look at the end of Go Games, things take a bit of a turn for the worse. Now, why is that? Too much emphasis on winning, keeping the best, poor coaching, other pursuits, lack of game time. So what are we going to do about it? We can throw our hands up in the air and say, Jesus Christ, this is happening everywhere, we can't do anything about it. But we have tried to do something about it. So what have we tried to do about it? We've introduced what I call the Super Games. And the Super Games are the equivalent of Go Games for youth players. And Super Games in a club or in a school. And in 2015, Darragh Sheridan, who was working in the Sports Institute, was doing a PhD study in Stirling University. And we said, look, Darragh, we'll set up 10 Super Game centres. They were spread all over Ireland. And at 7 o'clock on a Wednesday evening, if you want a game, go to the Super Game Centre. You have to be out of primary school. So we were trying to go 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 in 2-year age cohorts. So we had 430 participants across 24 weeks, and the response was phenomenal. Why? Because kids were driving the bus, they were doing what they want to do, there were no parents there, and this is the biggest irony of all, there was no coaches there. So there's an implicit and inherent message in there for our coaches and the quality of what goes on in that coaching world. A lot of what can be tracked back to keep the best, forget the rest. And the more we subscribe to keeping the best, the more we're fighting a losing battle. You're going to lose, that's guaranteed. So we then pushed on with the Super Game centres, and in 2017 what have we seen? 540 Super Game blitzes organised at club level, 685, you can read the stats there for yourselves, and we had 20,000 boys playing in the Super Games. That's phenomenal. That's transformative. What are we seeing at post-primary schools? Huge increases as well, particularly in first and second years. And Owen Hanley was speaking last night about GAAT, where they would generally have 25 on the school team. They had 95 playing because kids got the opportunity to play. So if you don't provide the opportunity to play, kids can't play. They must get the opportunity to play. And that's why we have to think outside the box and be creative about our offerings. And if we lock ourselves into leagues and championships, we're not going to succeed. The thing will keep contracting. So what have we seen? We've seen a huge increase, practically 100% increase. Now you can look at figures in different ways. And Professor Laverley in Abertay University said, Pat, you could be looking at up to 300% increase there, but we're happy enough to say there's been a 100% increase. If we can get that across the board, we'll be delighted. So the overall participation figures then look something like this, and that's phenomenal. Now I just want to finish with something that's been in my mind for a while. How are we fixed time-wise, Daly? 10 minutes, right? I want to finish with something that's been in my mind for a while. And I work with some great people here, some very creative people. And so David Sweeney is one of those, and David is not a name that would be well known. He played hurling with Dublin. He's an engineer. He's a graphic designer. He's a very quiet, understated guy. You never hear much about David Sweeney. Just gets on with his business. And he sets up our e-portfolio, all the online stuff, he does it. So I went to him and I said, look, David, I have an idea, because this MVA stuff can be difficult to get across to people, and we'll have to try and come up with some analogy. So I said, here we have. Now, if that thing is in the middle of the ocean, it has the potential to do serious damage. If you don't know it's there, and you bump into it at night. But it becomes a different horse, or it becomes a horse of a different colour now. And if we didn't say, we have these, and we've child, youth and adult, with small boats, with bigger boats, and with ships, they're floating around there. And it's very easy to blow the small boat out of the water. But it's a bit harder with the adult boat. So that rock, for me, are the J core values. Now, we could have a discussion for the next couple of hours on what the J's core values are, or what they should be. I have my ideas on what the J's core values should be, but I know one thing, it's all about developing character. And we could discuss that for a couple of hours. So we have the J's core values. Now, and they get expressed through the massive volunteer army, through the moderate to vigorous activity, because the coaches have what we call motivation and vocational attributes. That's how they get expressed. And what happens when they get expressed? They start going out. And the players develop competence. They develop confidence. They develop commitment. They develop conviction. And they develop connection. That's what the players develop. And that's all coming from the core values. And it's not coming from the BBC, which is bibs, bollards and cones. It's coming from the core values. And it's essential that you're clear about what those core values are. Then, the coach, John McGrath. What had John this morning? He had management. He definitely had leadership, capability, and he was prepared to learn from experience and reflection. And that's what we are trying to do. We are trying to, with the players, develop competence, confidence, commitment, conviction and connection, and with the coaches, management and leadership capability that comes from experience and reflection. Now, if you were really observant, you'd see 10 words, each of which has 10 letters. So that's what we call the Coach 10 model. Now, underneath this, there's a thing called self-sufficiency and sustainability. And if we want people to play the stay with the J, you can just barely see them, self-sufficiency and sustainability. And there would be no question of the Rat Hole Club contemplating having officers from other clubs. It would be unheard of. They can't have players from other clubs. Now, when I went there first, they had team, we had a combined team with Dunshaughlin and St. Martin's, so that was a different kettle of fish. But, and to my way of thinking, we can talk about self-sufficiency and sustainability when coaches come from clubs as well. And that's what we should be working on. So that is the big challenge. For me, the message you're sending out, the message we're sending out to you is reflected in what's there. The message you're sending out to the kids is also reflected in what's there. And ultimately, it's the clubs that will decide. And are you going to be self-sufficient? Are you going to be sustainable? And next year, and one of the great things about this conference, as soon as you finish planning for this one, you've started planning for next one. So next year, one of the keynotes will be Tony Hanahan. You say, why Tony Hanahan? Not the Dubs again. Not for those bloody guys. But the reason it will be Tony Hanahan, because he was the last guy to coach a team as a player and win All-Ireland. 1977. A lot of people think it was Kevin Heffernan who managed that team. It wasn't. It was Tony Hanahan. And my contention is that we want to develop competence, confidence, commitment, conviction and connection amongst players. And the club will say, we've no coach, we must get an outside coach. You can develop these things as well. And I would say, if you have no coach, identify 4 players and we'll train them up as coaches. Because why? They'll become leaders. They will develop management and leadership capability, experience and reflection. And I'm going to leave you, at a conference like this, you'll pick up many bits and pieces. Positive, negative, in between, neutral. Pick up a lot of positive energy as well. So Colm Egan, he's not here, he's from the Killarney Club in Tipperary. And his brother, Pat, what's his brother's name? Colm Egan's brother's name? Darry Egan, played with Tipperary, right? The Killarney Club took a decision, a conscious decision a number of years ago, 8 years ago, with the under-13s, because they're now under-20, they were under-21, so say last year. The under-13s, the guys were under-21 last year. And they won the under-21 tip final last year. They beat Tullis Vassils, which would have been a significant achievement because Killarney is a relatively small place. But what decision did they take? They took a decision that 4 senior players, 4 members of their senior team would have to go down and coach the under-13s. And those 4 came through with the under-13s. So it's not a mystery that they were successful. And that for me would be, in terms of a good story, that's a great story. But the model of the story is, we're all in the association, we're all doing different things in different ways, but I think the big challenge for us is to say, right, we differentiate between child, youth and adult, we know the absolute importance of providing games, and in terms of our massive volunteer army, we're trying to grow self-sufficiency and sustainability. Thanks very much. Okay, we'll take one question, shall we? Yeah. Yeah.
Very, very interesting and intriguing, really. But, you know, I'm going to pose a question. I'll ask the obvious question and have 4 people
hardcore club people expect juvenile sections to produce players at adult level. Primary purpose of the exercise.
No, walk away.
Yeah, just the primary purpose of the exercise, as we're told. Now, listening to you this morning and concentrating on the Go games for the adolescents.
Super games,
an intriguing concept. But I would ask the question, are we keeping players involved? Now, I have a very strong views on this. We should be keeping players involved, to keep them involved and to give activity and for more clubs and for good benefits in society generally. But I can see a couple of things, obviously, championships, leagues, and focus on those within clubs. So I'd ask a question, or I'd pose a question. Should we change our rules and insist that players play on the age only? So therefore you're under 14s or under 14s only, and you don't bring up the good under 12s. You're under 21 team that won the Tipperary championship. How many 18-year-olds are there on that team, for instance? And if we took a mindset, change the rules, would that help?
Look, I think it's a fair question, and it's a very honest question. And the answer, in my opinion, would be yes. But then all hell would break loose, because you have small clubs that you're going to put out of existence that want to be able to field teams, despite the fact that some of those small clubs would be able to field teams. And it's an excuse, and we can't be done. And this happened when under 17 was dropped down to minor. When minor was dropped to under 17, and there was all hell broke loose. The smallest county in Ireland by some distance, with the biggest percentage of kids on the cool camps by some distance, is Leitrim. They haven't won a minor game since 2001. Oh, that's wrong. There's something fundamentally wrong with that system. But they ploughed on anyhow, and they said, we're going 13, 15, 17. And it has transformed the thing in Leitrim. It has transformed. And they're trying to, insofar as they can, it's on the year. On the year, yeah, on the year, insofar as they can. Now, if that can be done in Leitrim, the smallest county in Ireland, with by far the smallest population, there's no reason why it can't be done elsewhere. But it would be impossible to get that change through Congress. I'd say that with the benefit of 37 years here. It would be impossible. And you just finish up tearing your hair out. But what can we do? The Super Games are played on the year. And everybody who plays in Super Games played on the year. And that's the way we go about it. So we can change the system from within, because the culture won't allow us. So what we're going to try and do is invade the thing from without, and that's what we are trying to do. Now, and that's what we have to try and do. And invading the thing from without would otherwise be classified as creative, innovative thinking. But we're either catering for kids or we're not. And if we're not providing games for them, we're not catering for them. And if we want to get locked into a system of leagues and championships, we're doing ourselves an injustice, but we're doing the kids a serious injustice. Serious injustice. And Colm O'Connor was in this room last year. You're a Cork man, yeah? Like yourself, a Cork man. A wonderful clinical psychologist. And he said, don't ever, he said, the day you got married, he said, if you started jumping around and shouting, people would say there was something wrong with you. Probably be right. But he said, you can come into this stadium and do whatever you like, he said, and it's normal. Even if Cork have been beaten by Waterford. So, but he made an even more profound statement. He said, don't ever deprive a kid of an opportunity to play the game, because we all live in our imaginations. You are depriving the kid of the opportunity to live in their imagination. And when I was a kid growing up, I wanted to be Jack Quinn from Meath, because I was living in my imagination. I wanted to be Philly Grimes of Frankie Welch, because I was living in my imagination. Kids lived in their imaginations, and that's what we must facilitate. So look, thanks for your time. There's a tea break, Joe, and the best of luck.